Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to learn how to label the tension flow rhythms. So the first thing we'll start with is you'll see on my piece of paper here, I have several lines drawn. And this is how we collect our data. So let's start with just looking at the pure rhythms. So going in developmental order, I'm going to start with the sucking rhythm. So because I'm practicing a sucking rhythm, my sucking rhythm is about this big. Then I'll go into the snapping biting rhythm. So snapping and biting. It's the same size, it just has that little bite. 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 Then we have the twisting rhythm, which can be in bound flow or it can be in free flow. Then we have the strain release, which is high intensity straining and releasing. Holding and releasing. Holding, straining, and releasing. Then we have the running drifting rhythm, which is kind of like a straight diagonal line, or it could have just a little bit of flurry to it. Something like that. Then we have the starting stopping rhythm, which could be just like little jagged edges. Then we have the swaying rhythm. So we have the swaying, swaying, bound, free. Just continue that line there. Then we have the surging, birthing rhythm, which can be free or bound. And then we have the jumping rhythm, smooth, high intensity, bound, free, bound, free, bound, free. And we have the spurting, ramming rhythm, which is also high intensity, but it's sharp. It has those sharp reversals. It's a really big movement. And we stop on the neutral line. Great. So this is what a continuous line of tension flow writing looks like. Remember, when we write tension flow, our pen is always moving, and when our mover moves, our pen moves. We never worry about analyzing the movement while we are watching. We just attune and write what we see. We keep our pen moving, and we want to write the rhythms as clear as possible. So that's why I encourage you to really practice writing the pure rhythms one line at a time every day to really get comfortable with your own handwriting. And even if you have some extra time, practice attuning and observing maybe someone on TV and create a little bit of tension flow writing for maybe something you're seeing on TV, just to get that extra practice in. But for now, we're going to learn how to label first the pure rhythms. So each pure rhythm can also be found in your manual. So I would like for you to always have your KMP manual in hand, and you'll see that on the pages Each of the rhythms is written in its individual form. Hold my camera up here. And it gives you a nice summary of each one. So please, please have this with you at all times during this phase and as we keep going from here. So, how do we label the tension flow rhythms? First, let's look at the sucking rhythm. The sucking rhythm is in the oral phase of development. So, because it's in the oral phase, it's going to get a letter O. So I'm just going to write a letter O above or below each sucking rhythm. Here's one, and here's one. So the rhythms happen individually, right? So what I mean by that is here is one sucking rhythm in relationship to the line. It's one bump or one hump. Then when we cross the line, we can see, oh, here's another sucking rhythm. We look at the line and we see, oh, here's the shape of another sucking rhythm. So the sucking rhythm is almost like a sine wave, okay? So we've labeled this and we've crossed the line and we see, oh, the shape has changed, so clearly we are done with the sucking rhythm. So we've labeled each of these with an O. Then what we do is we count. Since there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 O's right in a row, we can write underneath 6 and the letter O. And this represents these first 6 tension flow qualities. And then we move on to what happens next. So we cross the neutral line and look, we now have a sharp or fighting rhythm, clearly. It's the same size as the sucking rhythm. So it is the snapping rhythm, or this is still the same size as the sucking rhythm, and it's also got these sharp edges. So it's the biting rhythm because it has that little bit of evenness where they bit down. This is the bite. And both of these are the same size, so they both are called the snapping biting rhythm, which is labeled OS. So I'm going to write an OS above this one, an OS above this one, and the same thing. So I'm labeling each individual marking or bump. OS, OS, I cross the line. Here's an OS, I cross the line. Oh, here's another one. And it's a complete one. So we want to look for the complete shape in relationship to this line. Now the S is always added to each fighting rhythm. The O means we're in the oral phase. The S indicates snapping, biting, and the S also indicates the fighting quality of that phase. So now let's count how many OSs we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 OSs that happened one at a time and one right after the other. So I'm going to write 11 OS. And this represents all of this. And we don't write anything more until something changes. So the next thing that changed was we crossed the neutral line into bound flow. Anything below the line is considered bound flow. Anything above the line is free flow. So now we're in the twisting rhythm. Now remember, the twisting rhythm looks like the sucking rhythm, but it's turned on its side. So always remember that it's got these same bumps or squiggles or little twists of the wrist, but they're turned on their side like a piece of pasta at an angle, either angling diagonally this way or diagonally that way. And same thing, we're going to count each bump. So here's a bump, so we can write a little A here because we're in the anal phase. And here's a bump, so we can write an A here. And here's a complete bump, so A. And here's one. And just follow suit. So label each individual fluctuation. Here's one. Here's one. Here's one. So we're really labeling each twist. Each twist. Here's one that's kind of on its side. And then, oh, that's all. There's no more. So now we count how many A's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And underneath in that area, we write 15A. Now, in this same second year of life phase, the fighting rhythm is the strain release. So I'm going to write, because I'm in the anal phase, I'm going to write it above here just so you can see it. A, and then I add an S for strain release, and also the S indicates it's the fighting rhythm of that phase. So one complete strain release looks like a box with sharp edges. So a pure strain release needs to look like a box with 90-degree angles. Okay? So look at the angles of each side and make sure that they are all 90 degrees. You don't have to label it, but I'm just writing this here to help you how to determine if it's a pure strain release. It's pure because the edges are abrupt and angular, okay? So here's a full AS. Here's another box, so here's another AS. Here's another long box. Okay, here's an AS. And then we left the neutral line into something else. So we have 1, 2, 3 complete strain releases, one right after the other. So I'll write right here, 3AS. Moving on. Next, in development, we have the running drifting phase, which is the urethral stage or phase of development. So we write a U to represent the running drifting. So here's a running drifting. Here's a running drifting. Here's a running drifting. Now this kind of goes for a long time. So what do we do if there's a long period of running drifting? We measure one running drifting unit by about half of a swaying rhythm. So find your swaying rhythm. Here's one complete sway. and I'm going to divide it in half, so from here to here. And this amount is approximately what we'll call 1 unit of a running drifting. So we'll take that measurement over here and we'll say, okay, here's a U, so approximately here to here, and here to here, and let's say here to here. So here's a U, and here's a U. That's how we divide up the U running drifting rhythm into separate units. So then I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 U's. 5 urethral rhythms is another way to say it. The fighting rhythm of this stage is starting, stopping. So what do? Just like I did before, I count the tips. So that might mean a lot of counting. Okay, I'm not sure what this mark is. Oh, this is my divided U mark. So I'll start with this little point right here. We count absolutely everything. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. I counted 35 urethral starting, stopping rhythms. Okay? Every little detail gets counted. Moving on. In the next year of life, the indulgent quality is the swaying rhythm. This is the inner genital phase. So we use IG for inner genital to represent a pure sway, which is low intensity. Here's one sway. Here's another sway. Here's another sway. Here's another sway. Start at the line. There's one complete sway. A swaying rhythm looks like a very shallow bowl. And then we count the IGs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then below that area, we'll write 6 inner genital rhythms that occurred one at a time and one right after each other. The fighting rhythm for this phase or stage is the surging birthing rhythm, which looks the same, but it's high intensity. So it's a very, 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 very big rhythm. So here's one surging birthing rhythm. And here's another surging birthing rhythm, IGS, the inner genital surging birthing rhythm. The S gets written for all the fighting ones to distinguish them. And then below we can write that there were 2 inner genital surging birthings. Next we have something that's high intensity and smooth and abrupt. Well, which rhythm is that? That is the jumping rhythm. And this is the outer genital phase, so we abbreviate this with an OG. So here's one jump, here's one jump, etc. So we're going to label all of the bumps or all of the humps. OG, OG, etc. Every little thing gets labeled. And then we stop at the line because the minute we cross the line, something else happened. So we stop there and we're going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 OG rhythms that happened one at a time, one right after the other in sequence. And finally, the outer genital fighting rhythm is the spurting ramming, which has these sharp reversals, as we call them, these sharp tips. So we're going to label all those sharp tips OGS. And then we count all of the OGSs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And below we write 10 OGS. So this is what it looks like to label all of the pure rhythms. So at this stage, what you can do for practice is go into your manual and turn to the page where you'll see the pure rhythms labeled, and use the practice page and try practicing on your own. And then after you've done that and get really as comfortable as possible labeling the pure rhythms, come back to the next part and we'll learn how to label mixed rhythms. Now we move on to learning how to label mixed rhythms. So when we do our attention flow writing, we are going to see a lot of writing that has elements of each of these pure rhythms and elements of some of the other pure rhythms. So for example, if we look at this bump right here, it's not quite as big as, say, a jumping rhythm, even though it's very large, but it's not quite as small as a sucking rhythm. So when I look at just this bump, to me, I see a little bit of an O. I see a little bit, it looks kind of like a pure sucking rhythm. And I also see a little bit higher intensity like an OG. So this right here looks to me like a combination of O and OG. So that means it must be what's called a mixed rhythm. So because this has O and OG qualities, I'm going to label it OOG. So I essentially put these two together, and this is what I come up with, OOG. Now, we always write mixed rhythms in developmental order. So developmentally, the sucking rhythm comes first in the first year of life, and the outer genital jumping rhythm comes later, right? So we write OOG as the representation of the combination of these two rhythms and in developmental order. So now I move on to the next rhythm. So if we look here, look at this one. This kind of looks like a sucking rhythm, right? Yeah, but it's a little bit bigger. So what's going to give it that higher intensity and still stay smooth? Again, probably a jumping rhythm fits that description. So we're always looking for the qualities of each pure rhythm. and seeing what they look like when they mix together. And it just so happens that this one looks like an OOG too. So I'm going to call that an OOG. And lo and behold, look, this one looks like an OOG too. Now, since I have 3 of the same rhythms all in a row, I can write that there were 3 OOGs that happened right in a row. Now let's move on to what happened next. What did this person do next? They went into bound flow, and look, it's pretty abrupt and intense. Oh, but it has this little bit of a even flow here, and it does it again. Up, and it does it again. So again, it looks like this person did 3 of these repeating movements. So we first start and say, okay, what rhythm does this kind of look like to me? And I can say, well, I know that the strain release and the biting rhythms have this little even flow here. So the strain release is clearly a big, long rhythm, but the biting rhythm is a little bit shorter in its evenness. So I'm going to say that this resembles a biting rhythm. But the problem is this biting rhythm is close to the line. It's a smaller rhythm, whereas this one has something mixing with it to make it a little bit bigger. So, because it's abrupt and intense and looks a little bit smoother, it kind of looks like a jumping rhythm to me with just a little bit of evenness, right? So I'm going to call this a combination of OS, biting, and jumping, because it's got these sort of smooth edges, you see? Just that little bit of even like we would see in a biting rhythm. So I'm calling it OSOG. So we have an OSOG here, and I'm calling this the same thing. It looks like they happened 3 in a row. Here's a complete one, and then we cross the line and something else happens. So we're going to pause there and count 1, 2, 3 OSOGs happened right in a row. And we're writing in developmental order because the OS, the biting rhythm, developmentally occurs before the jumping rhythm does in development. Now we move on to the next thing. The next thing this person did is they went into free flow, and we have what looks to be some lines that are kind of on their side, but also kind of a diagonal line. So what rhythms do we know have a bump on their side, but also have these diagonal lines? So I say, well, I know that the twisting rhythm is the only rhythm that has these side bumps. And I also know that the running drifting rhythm is a diagonal line, right, in its shape. So to me, this looks like a combination of the A and the U kind of mixing together. We see a little flavor of the A, but we also see a little flavor of the U happening. And then it kind of drifts downward. So I'm going to call this, and what I can do is say here's sort of an A, U. Right here, this is like a twisty, drifty thing. And this is supposed to have a little twist here, and then it drifts down. So let's say this is an AU. So I've got 2 AUs that happened in a row. Next, we only write where there's a change. So the next thing that happens, we can't say anything more about this line, is we go into bound flow. We go in kind of smoothly, but we also go in intensely. So it kind of, to me, looks like a large bowl, but see, it kind of looks a little bit straight and even. So for me, this looks like a combination of a strain release box with its edges smoothed out, and it's a little bit smoothed out by probably a swaying rhythm. So I'm going to write, this looks like a combination of the strain release and the swaying rhythm. So as you can see in this second year phase, we labeled in developmental order. So the twisting rhythm comes before the urethral rhythm, running drifting. So I wrote AU to represent each AU that happened. Same thing here. The strain release developmentally occurs before the swaying. So when I write in developmental order. Okay? Let's do another one. Let's say we have something like this. Okay. So this person went from here into this. Now this looks like a big rhythm. So what are the big rhythms? The big rhythms are those that go far away from the line. So because it's smooth, it would be a smooth big rhythm like the jumping rhythm. So we know there's probably going to be an OG somewhere in there, but the OGs are closer together. They're not spread out. So something is spreading this out. What could that be? Well, if you look at the swaying rhythm, that's very stretched out. So another way you can try this is you can say, okay, this has like the height of an OG, but it's also got the distance of an IG. So when we put these two together, we get an IGOG. So the IGOG, written in developmental order, of course, is a very common rhythm in adults, and it is also called the Hershey rhythm, named after Hershey Marcus, who was one of Kestenberg's colleagues. And it's a very common rhythm we see in adults when they're dancing. So if you can imagine a combination of a sway and a jump, it's a very, very common rhythm. So you'll notice this if you're ever notating adults. So we call it the IGOG rhythm, but this logic that we used here is the same logic we'll use anytime we label a mixed rhythm. You'll look at the markings one at a time and look back at all of your pure rhythms and see which qualities are mixing together. So, what I'd like for you to do next is to go into your manual and look at your mixed rhythms page. And on your mixed rhythms page, you will see several examples of how one can mix rhythms together. So what I'd like for you to do is first just look at how the rhythm came to be. So for example, let's look at this UIG. Okay, so if we look at this line, we can say, okay, they decided to label this to include a running drifting rhythm and a swaying rhythm. So we can say that maybe for this person, there's like a little bit of this jagged running drifting quality, okay? And it's mixing together with the IG, so we're writing UIG. Let's look at another rhythm. Let's look at this ASOG rhythm. If we look at this shape, what qualities do we see? We see a high intensity quality, we see a smooth quality, and we see a little bit of almost a straight line. So what's mixing together here is the strain release and the OG, both high intensity, and when they mix together, this is one possible way for them to look. So the next thing we're going to talk about are what's called container rhythms. Now, container rhythms are the strain release, the swaying, and the surging birthing. Now they're called container rhythms because they are big rhythms and they're big and symmetrical as if they could be a vessel. So remember I talked about strain release looking like a box, and the swaying and surging birthing looking like bowls. So in order for something to be containing, it needs to have most of its pure elements intact. So here's what I mean by that. Let's say we have a rhythm that looks like this. So this person went into IGOG, and then they went into bound, and they went into something kind of like this. Okay, so this is an example of a container rhythm because if you look at the line and the edges in relationship to the line, we have almost the shape of a box, right? So we have almost the shape of a strain release, but not quite, because all of this even flow of a pure strain release has something that it's containing. The pure box is containing a bunch of different rhythm qualities. So, first thing we say is, okay, this whole rhythm right here almost looks like a strain release. So, I'm just going to write AS. We know it's got AS qualities in there. The next step is to label every individual fluctuation. So let's start right here. So we have the strain part, but then it kind of is smooth right here and on its side. That looks like a twisting rhythm to me. So this looks like a twisting. That looks like a twisting to me. Now here, look at this. This is like a point. So that kind of looks like a starting stopping, that little jagged edge. So I'm going to write US. That's a U, US. Oh, look. Here's another little jagged edge. That looks like a US, starting, stopping. Oh, look, here's a smooth and another smooth. Those both look like A's to me. Oh, look, here's a jagged edge and here's a jagged edge. So there's a US and here's a US. And then we have a little bit of an A before the edge of the box appears. Okay? So, because we know that we are writing in developmental order, we actually do something unique with the container rhythms because they're so big. So because I know the AS is the container, I'm going to underline it to give it credit, to say, oh, that's a big rhythm. Gonna credit it. And then in parentheses, I'm going to write everything that this AS is containing and in developmental order. So if we look in here, we have some A's and some US's. So developmentally, the A comes first. And how many A's do we have total in this box? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in an exponent, we write that there were 5 A's contained by this AS. That takes care of all the A's. We also said there were some US's, or little starting stoppings. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4 US's. And that's how we write everything about this one rhythm. So this right here is one rhythm. It is one mixed rhythm, and it is written like this. Now let's say we have something like this. So we clearly have, from start to finish, a rhythm that almost looks like a smooth bowl, right? So we can say, I'm going to write it a little bit bigger, see that it has an element of that smoothness, but because it's close to the line, it's going to be the only smooth, low-intensity rhythm, which is IG. Now, because most of the IG is there, we have both of the edges of the bowl. See that? Both edges can contain, look at that, this little thing here is being contained by these edges. So we're going to give this IG credit. And this thing on its side looks like an A to me. So, because we want to write in developmental order, I'm going to write an A in front of the IG, and the IG is underlined to tell us that it is the container. This sway is containing this A. Now I can only have container rhythms if the edges are present. Okay? If the edges are present. Two containers cannot contain each other. So remember back here when we wrote this ASIG, both the strain release and the swaying rhythm are containers individually. And when we mix them together, they become the mixed rhythm ASIG, but we do not need to underline it because neither of them are in their almost pure form. So two containers cannot contain each other is another rule to remember when you're labeling. So again, knowing these rules, go to your mixed rhythm page and start to practice labeling each mixed rhythm. Now, you will notice that there's actually two different ways to label container rhythms. You can either write in developmental order using the exponent and underlining, or you can start with the container rhythm and then write the exponents in developmental order. It doesn't matter which way you use. This is the way that I taught you, but either way is completely fine. Some other things to remember are, I have a note here to remind myself that if a US is present, there's going to be this jagged edge because the starting stopping rhythm interrupts. It's an interrupting quality. Whereas the running drifting rhythm just sort of drifts off. So those are some other things to remember when you're practicing mixed rhythm labeling. All right, so for now, please review writing down the pure rhythms and labeling them, and then practice writing down the mixed rhythms and labeling them. And then hopefully you have saved your practice labeling that we did in class when you did a tuned tension flow writing with your pairs, and practice labeling your rhythms that you attuned to and wrote down in class. And then what we'll do is we'll learn how to put these labels into graphs. But for now, your task is simply to get fluent and skill building with writing down the rhythms, labeling them, and then you'll have a chance to review these in your movement labs. So thank you everyone for watching this tension flow rhythm labeling tutorial. Remember to please refer to your KMP training manual, the PDF file. All of the information that you need is in there, and this simply takes practice. If you have any questions at all, please send me an email. You can also include Kara in the emails. So please do keep in touch with us if you have any questions between now and your next movement lab. Thanks so much for watching. Good luck. Please keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next class.